Well, welcome. My name is Stephanie Benedetto, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. And our special guest today is Cherie Ray. She's going to talk about happiness stalling out. Let's check under the hood. The illusory nature of the outside world being the problem. So Cherie Ray, MLA, is a coach and consultant to business leaders, teams, couples, and individuals who want to live a more richly connected life with more resilience and creative potential. So I'm going to turn this over to Cherie, and she's going to talk for a while. At some point, she said, let's make this more like a coffee shop conversational. So I'm guessing that means if you have a question, anything you'd like, you can raise your hand, you can put something in chat, and we'll at some point invite you to speak as well. So without further ado, take it away, Cherie.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for making time in your day to come to this conversation. And I also like to acknowledge the Three Principles Global Community for sponsoring these events. And also, I love the idea of putting in a plug for the book study group that's going to be starting on September 13th. It's a deep dive into the works of Sydney Banks, and they'll be facilitated by a lot of great people and over time. And I think it's a really stellar offering. I like the idea of just having more conversation about the works of Sydney Banks and what he did and what he tried to share. So I put in my plug for that. I think it's very worthwhile. Oh, great. Thank you, Stephanie. All right. So I'll start off with the title that occurred to me was happiness stalling out. And let's look under the hood, because I'll say within COVID and the times that we've been living in, I've lived with a lot of changes and getting the opportunity to wake up to many layers of me looking like, or waking up to really still believing my happiness or sources of my happiness are outside of me. As things got taken out of my life, it started to wake up like I didn't realize I had attached so much of my well-being to things of the structure of my life, just to the structure of my life. So as things started to be taken away, it was very disruptive to the intellectual knowing that my happiness is outside of me, but the true depths of my being, still seeing what was outside of me as being a source of great happiness, like outside lifelong connections and I'll say structures that I'd lived within that I was asleep to how I leaned on them. So that really woke up in me how illusory the nature of our happiness can be. Because with that, living in this intellectual knowing that we're all curious about the three principles, and then having the opportunity to rely on insight to continue your learning and my learning, it started to really help wake me up to, like I said, the illusory nature of it, because with the illusory nature of it, it comes with all the feeling, it comes with the felt experience. To me, it's one of the great intoxicants of life is how illusory, how this movie starts playing and how we live inside this movie with as if it's real. I mean, as if the reality we're seeing is a single sourced reality. And when I say a single source reality, I was making up that the whole world was seeing the world as I was seeing it. So that's how the thought of the waking up to it and waking up to, I mean, really waking up to having to look deeper within to where the happiness resides, or where the peace resides, or whatever your word is, your sense of well-being, your sense of joy. And so what came to mind for me this morning was just to invite you to bring to mind some challenge you're having that you feel like is robbing you of your happiness. Just anything you feel like you're currently facing that's a deterrent to you being happy in your life. And then I just would love for you to park it to the side. Don't do anything with it, but just park it to the side. So in this exploration, I noticed, or it helped me to see through the teachings of Sydney Banks and understanding that the intelligence that sees is completely clean and neutral. There is no challenge. There is no happiness, unhappiness. The intelligence that we live in that does the seeing. So I felt that was really amazing, because what that did for me was it woke me up to the color of the lens that I was seeing the world. And I'll say the color of the lens that I was seeing the world was innocently moving through solving problems or situations to reach that place of happiness. And that sounds like, I don't know what it sounds like to you, but I started to see it as it was such an innocent way of just seeing life through the need to solve challenges to be okay. The need to solve challenges and situations or get them resolved, and happiness would be on the other side. And what I started to find so interesting was that was the color of my lens. That it was totally mine, innocently mine, the color of my lens. But it's so illusory in that I just thought that's how life looked. You know, get these things in order. Life has challenges. Things need to be solved. It certainly is a system that I lived in for, I don't know, as long as I can remember, until most recent days, that the color of that lens was tainted. That the intelligence behind life that does the seeing doesn't see the world as challenges. So I say that in that place of just reflecting on whatever challenge or problem you might have brought to mind earlier. And in your own reflection within yourself, does that feel more like life? Or does it hopefully, I don't know, hopefully, but, or does it open the possibility that that could just be the lens that you're seeing life through? If it's all completely neutral and the intelligence that's seeing life is completely clear, does it look like life, the challenge that you took out and put on the shelf, does it look like a state of mind question, or does it look like life? Does anybody want to share anything that came to mind for you? Great, Carrie. Hey, Carrie, great to see you.
I guess like in your title, it was a webinar on loving. So you jumped
That was
in.
a typo. That was
Yeah.
somebody, my virtual assistant did it backwards.
Yeah,
So
but
I apologize.
it's easy to relate the two in that in your description, it was like, if I do this, take this action, then I'll be happy. And a lot of times people in relationship think if I find this certain partner, if I behave in these certain ways, then people will love, approve of me, then I'll be happy. Rather than, and all those are like thinking that you have to do something or be something or say something in order to receive something outside of yourself in the external world. So there's like this seeking. Rather than if you stop all that and just lay that all down and understand that the joy that you're seeking or love doesn't come from the outside. You have to connect to those things within yourself. So if you are connected to love and you're connected to joy and you have experiential knowing of that as your essential nature, then as you move throughout the world and throughout the day and you take action, you may choose to do the same action as far as solving problems, but your joy isn't attached to a particular outcome. And so maybe it works out a certain way and maybe it doesn't, but your joy isn't dependent on that because your joy comes from within. And same thing in relationship. Like we all strive to build healthy, authentic relationships. But if your sense of well-being and worthiness and love is something that you're connected to as your essential nature, that's a very different way to be in relationship. So, and in fact, you're most likely to have love reflected back to you when that is just your essential experience, and that no matter what arises, no matter what comes and goes, no matter the conditions or circumstances that surround me, I can connect to love and joy and peace within, no matter what happens here.
Mm-hmm.
Things are always going to be happening on the surface. And sometimes we like it and sometimes we don't. Those are our judgments and preferences, and that's all well and good. But there's always, as long as we're existing on this planet at this time, there's still duality and polarity. So if you have a preference for certain outcomes, the opposite's always going to exist. And that's just the way it is. But all that is arising on the surface. And all those things are important, but they're relatively important. And as long as you keep coming back to what is primarily important, which is your presence, your state of consciousness, your state of being, as all of these things are coming and going. It's just, I don't know, it's just a different way of being in the world, but not of the world, and staying grounded and connected to source rather than being identified with as the small ego personality that if you're on the surface all the time, you really get like all that stuff really throws you. But if you can stay tethered and grounded to something that's more essential, more timeless, keeping one foot in like a place of if you can keep one foot in the place of your knowing yourself as an essential, timeless being, and then 1 foot also as the human going through your life. It's a unique experience and it has great value. So it's not like these things are an illusion that aren't real. It is. I mean, we are choosing to be here at this time, and the experiences that we're having, each of us collectively and individually, are important to our development, not just as individuals, but as the collective. So it is important. So it's important that we pay attention and we take part and we speak up where we feel moved to do so, and we take action where we feel moved to do so. But also at the same time, just coming back to the timeless, formless dimension and that identity with something that's, I don't know, different people have words for that, presence or consciousness or source.
Exactly, Carrie, exactly. And that's my point. I think in this times, it's a real opportunity for waking up to where happiness resides, waking up to what we are, what our essential nature, our essential nature of whatever words you want to use around that, as love or wholeness or divine intelligence, whatever you want to call it. The words aren't important, but to me, it's so valuable to claim that as your foundation to build a life on and to move from. Then I'll just say my old way of seeing the world of going out to get, like going out to get innocently. I mean, there's no harm, no foul. It's just the opportunity to wake up, but getting. And I think the opportunity is, and especially in the works of Sydney Banks, how he shows that the opportunity to see something fresh at any moment, we might call it insight, but the opportunity to see something fresh every moment is part of that wholeness and that essential nature that supports us all our life, to like what I was pointing to about things, structures being in my life that aren't there, and then getting the opportunity to wake up that while those things were preferences and things that totally brought me joy and love, they weren't the source of my happiness. So where does happiness reside? Because I'm not in control of those things that are no longer available to me. So that everything you said, absolutely beautifully stated. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share about what we're talking on? Linda.
Well, when you were talking, Cherie, it just reminded me of myself when I smoked cigarettes. Okay, like cigarettes made me happy. And then I would want a cigarette and I wasn't happy until I got a cigarette. But I had to keep getting cigarettes if that was my mentality about it. It actually made me laugh inside. And I just got what you were talking about the difference between that and my own true nature, period, finish. It's not about the cigarettes or anything else that I think it might be about.
Totally. That the availability is there. That I'll say and maybe, happiness might be too lofty of a word during times of intense grief or loss. But I mean, even that place of your okayness, that there is more to this life that is, there's obviously more because you're still here. Like Carrie said, we're here at this time. We didn't go with the ones that left. So we must have something and for us to be here to and to be open to. And but how easily and how innocent, Linda, you attach we attach ourselves to something outside of us. And I think what you're pointing to is something as innocent as a cigarette, that how much can get loaded on, you know, a wrapped up fragments of tobacco. We're really putting a lot on it, you know.
And it just made me feel really happy to hear all that and just be able to see it and laugh about it and go on, you know.
Mm-hmm. And what you pointed to too is like the gift of insight, that we have this, the truth is we have the opportunity to see something fresh at any time. And something moved on the inside of you to see it differently.
Yes, thank you very much. It's great.
Well, I think about it as like, it's not even a superpower. It's just part of all of us. You know, I used to think other people would, that could happen to other people, but it wouldn't happen so much for me. But it's just part of us, which I think is so important to know, that that shift can happen, maybe not as dependable as we might like, you know, Amazon Prime or FedEx, you know, we know when it's going to get delivered, but we know that the chance that, you know, there's a real chance that if I'm open to it, I'll hear and see something fresh.
Yes.
I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Janet.
So you spoke about knowing on some level that that was true, but the shift that happened to you through the COVID time and various griefs and losses that made you know it was true, or experience that as being accurate, or realizing in fact that that you had resources that had left or moved along, you know, that you realized were not, you know, that were external. So I guess what I'm asking, the question for me is that how did you move from like knowing on a practice level, like, you know, for me, it would be like coming to these seminars or reading or whatever, and getting the concept and staying in touch with that concept, journaling about that, but then actually realizing when you're feeling very uncomfortable because those sources of who you thought you were have gone away. How did you make the shift to where you actually felt okay with that? Or do you have any insights about what got you from the theory and the understanding to actual internalizing that and realizing that?
Well, I'll say it's lots and lots and lots of discomfort. You know, I'm not one for suffering, but it wasn't a choice. You know, there was lots and lots of discomfort and uncomfortableness, and even arguing with what my mind would even make up about feeling good. You know, like my mind would make up, I would find myself having a good time, and it would be like, oh my God, I didn't think about them for a while. Does that mean they didn't matter and they aren't, you know, but what am I to be having this great feeling and then being uncomfortable with what my thinking would make up about me having I'll say a revitalized experience of life. It made up that I was disrespecting the ones that are no longer here. You know, so I say lots of those kind of insights that in our fluctuations, you know, it was almost like all those ways are places of seeing the world still exist. You know, like I could step into the reality that if I didn't keep those people on my mind, that they didn't matter, but that was illusory and made up too. So I woke up to how many ways that my mind would make stuff up about just being in life. And I had to notice how my mind would define happiness. That happiness, these people had to be in my constellation for me to be happy, but I didn't know I was carrying that. And then you wake up to it and you feel uncomfortable a whole lot. So it wasn't a how, it was just like, I'll say the truth of life showing me that you must not be done yet because you're still here. And there's depending on if I'm here in this conversation talking to you or thinking about other times, is to me a constant thing. We as human beings teeter back and forth about where we find our happiness. And rest and kind of coming back to right here. And what's happiness? What is happiness? You know, dancing on the table, or is it having some sense of peace in how life's unfolding, regardless of what's happening out there, regardless of, gosh, that all that uncontrollable stuff that makes no sense, but we seem to be surrounded by it. And continues to happen, all the things we can't explain.
Yeah, I guess right now I find myself, so a status quo that I preferred or was just used to has passed away. And I am coming in and out, I notice, of, as you say, feeling either really uncomfortable or arguing with that, you know, internally, you know, or thinking, oh, well, I can get that back or not. And though intellectually I know that that's not true and that the happiness is located internally and not about externals, boy, it is a struggle to, you know, I mean, you realize how much you truly believe in something that's not really true, you know. I don't know, you know,
Exactly.
how much your mind will lie to you.
Exactly. And then it floods you with all those feelings.
Yeah, and
You
why
know,
would
as
you want to give up and move on so that you couldn't actually feel better, even if it's not, quote, happiness? But it's really funny about the resistance that is set up here about letting go of old ways of framing things. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
exactly. And it's so, I think it's so interesting. I always found it interesting that there's a part of me as a human being that is not on my side, you know. There's a part of me as a human being that's not on my team, and I'd go like, what is up with that in this divine design? Why do I have this part that generates suffering for me? It's uncontrollable, but it still is part of us, and I found that fascinating. And how you can teeter back and forth, you know, how you can teeter back and forth in all these different realities if you want to step in them, and that the gift of, looks, I don't know if it didn't always feel like a gift, but that the opportunity, or are the rug's going to get pulled out from under you and say, that wasn't it. Can't have that one. Let's look again. But in those structures and in those accoutrements to life that we were in agreement with, and then they get pulled away.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Janet. Carrie, thank you very much.
I think it's interesting too how this idea that we're supposed to be happy all the time, like, and we feel like if we're not happy, then we must be doing something wrong.
Mhm.
So I do like you reframing it to just okayness. But I do notice that maybe kind of to respond to that question, there are like practices to help you. Some people call it like sitting with emotions or the work of inquiry, or Eckhart Tolle. Just if you can bring your awareness to whatever the emotion is that you're feeling, whether it's stress or whatever kind of suffering or discomfort that you're feeling, if you can just be, instead of being completely identified with the emotion, say anger, for example, instead of like, oh, I'm so angry, like just taking a step back and taking a brief breath and kind of grounding into your presence. And then just noticing that anger is arising through me rather than being completely identified with I'm angry. Just notice that anger is arising. And then you can move into just somatic sensing of what it feels like to be in your body when anger is arising. And it's going to be different for each people. Like maybe you have like tension in your forehead, or maybe you feel choked up, or maybe there's a knot in your stomach, or maybe you feel hot. Like that helps you move from the thinking mind into the physical embodiment. And that's a step away from being identified with the emotion. And then if you can keep breathing and kind of keep staying in a state of awareness, then it's almost like you can come to a place of curiosity. Like, why does this anger keep arising in me? And then you can kind of ask questions inward about that. And that's kind of the beginning of the process of inquiry or awareness. But you just kind of invite it in for tea and meet it with a sense of curiosity without really trying to fix or change anything. And sometimes those emotions have a way of losing their potency, or sometimes you do have a moment of insight into the awareness of why that is arising. But it really changes that level of energy and emotion and identity around whatever is arising. And I think for me, when things keep arising, like if you keep having a certain pattern or energetic pattern or conditions in your life that you see repeating, a lot of times, like for happiness, like you think you should be happy all the time and you're doing something wrong and you don't want to be unhappy. So you kind of resist it and you want to push away, or you want to fix it, or you want to change it. So you're putting all this energy into changing something that I find a lot of people don't want to sit with what they consider negative emotions. But if something keeps coming up, I would just invite you to try something different, like inquiry or something, because if you just turn to it and meet it with curiosity and awareness, then you're not pushing and running from it anymore. And a lot of times there's really beautiful information and insight if you can turn towards it and sit with it, invite it in, and open to it. Because then you don't do it with the intention to resolve it and fix it and change it. But sometimes that happens, but I'm not quite sure the right words. It's almost like once you see it for what it really is and you understand where it's coming from and why it keeps you kind of undo the knots that have kind of kept you in bondage and tied to this energetic pattern. And then you're in a space of choice. Like you can continue to do that, or you can make you have new fresh information and insight to make another choice to go in a different direction. So it can really, in that sense, there's a sense of freedom and liberation. And that's just one layer. Like you continue that process over and over again, but each time you do that, each time you turn towards it and meet it in that way, like you have a renewed sense of freedom and liberation from things that used to really trigger you in lots of different ways. So and there's lots of other processes like that can really help you shift your way of being in relationship to different things, emotions and conditions and patterns and things.
And I think what you're pointing to, Cherie, is the essential truth of our own free will, and our free will to to be able to see how we can use our mind as the free will to use it as a tool in any way we want. And the free will of gaining the awareness of what causes your suffering, in the sense of how much I indulge. I'll say how much of how much I indulge of what my mind is producing and its impact on my life. Is it producing underlying all of that thinking is wholeness and peace. So it's in free will, it's like we can use the tool of thought to, I kind of use it. I use the word curate in my own life. I'm like going, okay, if I could really curate the life by using free will of what I want to experience, I tend to I tend to not see any. It makes no sense to me to ruminate. Doesn't mean I won't, but as soon as I catch myself ruminating, it's like, well, that's of no benefit. So it helps me to know that I have free will to look away from ruminating. My mind might go right back to it, but I have free will to look in another direction. And that free will of you can listen to your own essential wisdom or higher nature or intuition or whatever you want to call it that resides in you. You have the free will to listen to it or not. You have the free will to act on it or not. You have the free will. I always use the example of like drunk dialing, as bad as that was in the college days, it's like, oh, if you'd only been aware of free will, you probably wouldn't have thought drunk dialing was such a great idea. I don't know. I just think that that's a funny analogy of being very aware that we have free will to that we can use the tool and not be reactive to everything our mind offers up to us. I think that's such a gift to know that exists inside all of us.
And when you turn towards whatever that, say you think it's a negative emotion, when you turn towards that and meet it with openness and with compassion, and you're not judging yourself for feeling that way, it's a very different way to meet it. And when you turn towards it, it's like you're putting this light on it. And so it comes out of the shadows and it can come up where it can be seen. And that's where the kind of that healing takes place. Really beautiful process. And it is this really beautiful, loving process, but so many people are afraid to turn and look at difficult feelings and emotions. But it's that's where the freedom is. So it's you want to chase happiness, but really I find it seems like the opposite. It's you got to turn towards, really look at what you think is causing unhappiness. Not really. Yeah, turn towards it instead of try to push it away or run from it, if it's something that's continual.
And I think even the kind of, to me, just what I have found has been a place of real peace is just accepting my humanness, accepting emotional swings and accepting human frailty, of putting my foot in my mouth or whatever. It's like, the more I can accept just the humanness and human frailties of being human, it seems to get a whole lot easier. The experience of life. It's not a bypass or anything, but my peace is more stable inside the more I can embrace my humanness and not think humanness is a problem. It's like I can't override the system, but I could live more peacefully inside the system. That's what it looks like to me.
And yeah, I'm all for having compassion for ourselves, because nobody gets to this age in life that hasn't been taught mistruths and been conditioned to believe things that really aren't to our benefit. And we've all been traumatized to some degree in this life. And so, yeah, I definitely think self-compassion is essential. And when you can do that for yourself, then you can give that to others in a very real, palpable, authentic way.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm. I loved it when I saw that it was how I kind of saw that the nature of life, truly the way it looks to me, the nature of life, there's a lot of uninvited guests and happenings and occurrences, and nobody, it's not a sign of a successful life or not. It's like, okay, if I was good enough, this wouldn't have happened. All that thinking about what I need to improve so these things don't happen. It's like, no, there's a randomness to life that if the nature of life is things are going to happen that you wish hadn't and wasn't going to happen. But it's like, what are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with them? And that even brought a layer of kind of settling into being equipped for this life that I was given. It's like, oh, I didn't do anything. The thinking that you could do something wrong for things to occur. It's like, oh no, it's the nature of life. There's a lot of peace in aligning with the nature of life, not fighting the nature of life, or the way it looks to me, fighting the nature of humanness. It's like, don't fight that. That's not, there's no peace in that direction. So, a happiness, I used happiness in this conversation. It's really a broad stroke because people, and in my own world, was kind of so destabilized by life and what was happening in the world that the opportunity to live more peacefully in this evolving of life and how it's happening, I think is so important. And that to know, really to look in the direction of the to look at, to me, in what looks like a very truthful and honest direction of where a peaceful life originates is so helpful, and the limitless nature behind that seems to take the chasing out of it, but more the reflection, the curiosity, the opening up to something else.
Yeah, I feel like, especially the times that we're in right now, when you talk about free will, I feel like we all kind of have a choice where we can meet these challenges, and it can either push you into deeper consciousness where you really grow in your level of consciousness, or it can take you further into unconsciousness. I'm curious what other people think about that idea or concept.
Anybody like to respond to that?
I would. I go get a
Susan?
um, one of the things that keeps coming to mind for me is George's the repetitive little comment he uses a lot for himself, apparently, is, I just had to get over myself. If I keep taking, and I used to take everything personally, I take the news personally. I mean, it's like I didn't know how to stop doing that, so I stopped watching the news. So if everything is personal and nothing is random, real
I don't know, Susan, if you can hear me, but it broke up. You froze. So
a plan. I know we're driving, so it's kind of okay. That there, are you still? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I can hear you
Okay.
well now.
Okay. So I can't think of everything as random, like I'm dodging bullets either, you know, and I do, for me, in my life, I really believe that there is and I may just be making this up, of course, but I get to make up how I choose to live. So that's a good thing. That there is a plan somewhere. I'm not privy to it. I don't know why I have the innate intelligence, why we all have it. So I figured there must be some huge plan somewhere. I don't know, but what I've been able to do in what Cherie was talking about is the more I can disconnect from thinking that things are personal, number one, or that there's something that I have to, if I get more and more upset, so that's going to do something, which it isn't, that if I can come back just into my own self, and that's something the understanding has really given me, that my own self is not my thoughts. If I get back just to my thoughts, I'm a goner again, because it just takes me back to that other stuff. And so I'm noticing that what I really have, the tool I have, is practice. Practice, practice, practice. And everything that happens in life is an opportunity for me to practice. Letting go, not making it personal, and not going with my thoughts. In fact, I'm in the process right now of sort of retraining my mind to help to be a healer rather than a whatever else it wants to do, all the problems. Because when I'm doing any kind of practice, it gets so distracting when the mind is just going and going and going. And it actually can learn. It's pretty incredible. It's not dumb up there or wherever that is. So I think it is about coming home to me and then participating in life out of that grounding. And for all I can see is that it really takes an intention and a commitment and then practice. That's it. It sounds simple, but the things that are simple are the hardest to do usually.
That's true. That's true. I love that. I love the idea that I have free will to look away from my thinking, you know? And I thought the only thing was to run to the end of the diving board and take the deep dive into my thinking, you know?
Right.
So it's like, oh, I could use free will and look away. What else exists in the universe if I look away from my thinking? I was like, that's an option. That seems to reduce suffering right there. You know, I can look away from it.
Yes.
But it's practice. It's like again and again and again.
And again.
Yeah, and that's not a faulty system. It's just being human.
Yeah.
It's just being human one more time.
Seems to be the way it works. I don't want to fight that.
No. What if it's a system that doesn't need to be improved on, you know? What if that's on numbers? Yeah. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, that's a great point. Because I think even in your what you mentioned, like a practice or like mine of like looking away from my thinking, my own wisdom gave me one day, which I love, was like, you know, there's a reality out there where this isn't a challenge. There's a reality out there that this isn't a problem. I was like, oh, okay, I'll look and see what that might, and my mind would open to something else, you know? And I was like, that didn't come from me. That came from my higher sources. Somewhere out there, there's a reality where this isn't a big deal. Oh, okay. Show me where, what would that feel like?
Yeah, and asking myself, how is this a problem?
Oh, I don't want to
Not-
ask myself that because my mind would give me plenty of reasons about
No, not why is it a problem?
Oh.
How is it a problem?
Oh, okay. So
There's a difference.
there is, but you see the pattern in my mind went right to why is this a problem?
Of
It wanted to
course.
start serving up.
We all want to answer with why it's a problem. It's Linda who taught me that. And the woman tried to tell her why this thing was a problem. And she said, no, I didn't ask you why. I asked you, how is it a problem? The woman was like, oh, well, it's not, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Why? Why that has stayed with me.
Thank you for that. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Anybody else have something they'd like to share that's on the top of their mind? I always like the invitation that it's better on the outside than the inside.
I see Eric has his hand up.
Oh,
If you want
great,
to
Eric.
unmute for us, Eric.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, thank you. And it's been wonderful listening. Just want to make sure, I'm not sure if I got it right, but I just wanted to kind of present what I'm hearing.
Great.
And this is kind of how it sounds to me. I'm using my internal mechanism. Here's what it sounds like. Sounds like not all good feelings are insightful, and not all disruptive feelings are a signal of imbalance. And both equally can contribute to an awakening, an understanding of our sacred origin. And for that, it's all good. So I don't know if I'm on the right track, but I just put that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's another great way to say what we're talking about. And I find it fascinating how I always find it fascinating what people hear and for them to share how they hear it. So I appreciate that. Anybody else have anything you want to share? Well, I thank you all so much for coming to the conversation. Janet, did you have something?
Oh, no, I was just laughing about how the most recent thing you said, that there's a reality where X, whatever's like really keeping you from being happy, is not a problem or not a big deal. How do I get there? Boy, actually, I can think of lots of ways. So that was really helpful. That's a pretty simple mechanism. I like that. Thank you.
It didn't, I would love to take credit from it. It didn't come from me. It just seemed so obvious one day that somewhere out there this isn't a problem. And my mind relaxed. And I think there's this, it's what I make up, but I just believe there's such a wisdom that is on board with me suffering less. True or not, I don't know, but that's what it looks like to me. And I'll go with it. Please, Bruce, if you can unmute.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you use the words affirm and validate. And I think we're so used to our mental capacity of thinking our way through things and our sensory capacity of, feedback, that we want to affirm and validate everything that passes in front of us. And what comes to mind is flying on a trapeze, that, when we haven't left the first trapeze to get to the second one, we're fully cognitive. Am I going to let go of this? And I'm gripping, I'm holding. But once we're suspended in air, all our thoughts and sensations are not going to change what's happening. We're truly in the world of physics, which is velocity and vector and the power of gravity. And there's not a damn thing we can do about it. When we get on the other side, we're back into affirming and validating. Oh, good, I made it. You know, and that's kind of that space where wisdom or insight comes from. You know, we can't necessarily intend it to our liking. We might put out an idea, and whether it happens or not, and you know, we just can't manipulate it and control it with input and feedback to affirm and validate. There's the best word to me is trust. And you know, when our thoughts get quiet and we're at that higher level of consciousness, things just appear, and we trust that they will. And you know, that's when we set aside ourself with a small s and live in that big S. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Quick question.
Janet.
Quick question. Going back to what you said early, kind of putting two segments together. So seems like to me what you said about there's a wisdom on board that prefers that I suffer less is in direct opposition to the quote, part of me that's not on my side. So that kind of, I mean, I kind of like that polarity because, I mean, I'm kind of through the various things we've talked about, understanding, you know, that wisdom that prefers I suffer less would be what I think is my essential nature, you know, the part I access for creativity or whatever. And that the part of me, because I was kind of going like, yeah, I've got that part that's not on my side. Where's that coming from? And I would guess that is my mind and it's insecurity and fear, you know, stuff my mind is made up. That's the part that's not on my side, I'm thinking.
Right, but I think it's also on our side that helps us wake up to insecurity. You know, we didn't have the feeling of insecurity, and it helps us wake up to what may not be so conscious to us.
Gotcha.
So I think, yeah, it's all. I think it's all in our favor. It's all for us.
So the tug between the two is what makes us aware of where things are located, I guess.
I think, yeah, it's all that would, to quote George, would be above my pay grade, but it's, I do believe it's all in our favor, you know, but just to be aware of free will and how I can see thought in any moment in my life and the role that it's playing. And is it contributing to really how I want to feel in life? Do I want to stay stirred up, or would I rather be more relaxed on a good day? I love that quote about Sid Banks that said, for me, if I knew how much the role of thought is playing in my moment to moment life, the world would look different. That's the way I paraphrase it. And I think that's helpful. Well, gosh, I thank you all for coming. In this conversation of really just wanting to invite the truth that your peace or happiness or whatever word you want to use is on the inside, is within, that maybe it can all get a whole lot easier to move through what we're moving through and wake up to more. So thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Cherie. This has been wonderful. Thank you for helping us to see a little bit more where it looks like the outside is creating our feeling. That's really powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure. Wonderful to
you,
see you.
Thank you. You're an
Thank
angel.
you. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.